I still remember the exact way she looked at me when she said it. The music was loud, people were laughing all around us, but her eyes were locked on mine like we were the only two people in the room. And when she leaned closer and whispered, "Can we go someplace alone?" my heart stopped so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I am not the kind of man this kind of thing happens to. My name is Jake Mercer. I sell insurance in Tucson, Arizona. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment with thin walls and a view of a parking lot. I drive a used Honda Civic that makes a soft squeak every time I press the brakes. My life is simple. Work, home, microwave dinner, sleep. Repeat. 2 years before that night, my girlfriend Mia left me. No screaming. No drama. She just sat across from me on my old couch and said I was too comfortable being average. She said she wanted more. More excitement. More ambition. More fire. "You're a good man, Jake," she told me, "but good isn't enough for me." She moved to Chicago 3 weeks later, and I stayed exactly where I was. I told myself I was fine. I went to work every day. I paid my bills. I kept my head down. I stopped trying to be anything more than safe. That was the version of me who walked into that charity art auction in Scottsdale on a Saturday night in October. My boss, Frank, had bought a table for our office and made it clear that attendance was not optional. So I put on my one good Navy suit and drove 40 minutes to a place that made me feel small the second I stepped inside. Crystal glasses. Soft piano music. Women in dresses that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Men talking about investments and property deals. I grabbed a glass of water from a tray and stood near a wall, pretending to study a painting of ocean waves. That is when I saw her. Linda Castellano. Mia's mother. I had not seen her since the breakup. Back when Mia and I were together, I used to sit at her dining table on Sundays. She would serve pot roast and ask about my job. She had this warm, quiet smile that made you feel welcome, but the woman standing across the room that night did not look warm or steady. She looked lost. Her shoulders were tight. Her eyes were red like she had been crying. Her husband was nowhere in sight. Richard Castellano was the kind of man people noticed when he walked into a room. Big real estate developer, sharp suits, sharp voice, always important. But Linda was alone. I told myself to stay out of it. It was not my place. She was my ex's mother. The last thing I needed was to reopen old wounds. Then she turned slightly, and I saw her press her hand against her mouth like she was trying to stop herself from breaking down. Something in my chest twisted. I walked over before I could stop myself. "Mrs. Castellano," I said softly. She flinched and turned. For a second, she looked confused. Then recognition filled her face. "Jake," she said, and my name sounded tired in her mouth. "Are you okay?" I asked. She let out a small laugh that was not really a laugh at all. "Do I look okay?" Up close, I could see her mascara had smudged under one eye. Her hand was shaking slightly. "Richard was supposed to be here," she said. "He had a meeting. He always has a meeting." Quote. There was something empty in her voice that felt familiar. I had heard it in my own head after Mia left. We stood there for a moment while people passed by us, smiling, drinking, bidding on art. Then she looked at me in a way that made my stomach tighten. "Jake," she said quietly, "can we go someplace alone?" The words hit me like cold water. My brain started racing. This was Mia's mother, a married woman. A woman almost twice my age. Every alarm in my head went off at once. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said quickly. Her face fell for just a second. Not angry, not embarrassed, just hurt. "I'm not trying to do anything wrong," she said. "I just need to breathe. I can't go home yet. I can't sit in that big empty house pretending everything is fine." Her voice cracked on the last word. I felt torn in half. The safe version of me wanted to walk away. This was not my problem. I had already learned what happens when you get too involved in someone else's storm. But the other part of me, the part that had been numb for 2 years, felt something wake up. "I'm sorry," I said carefully. "I can't take you somewhere alone." The silence between us stretched. Then she nodded slowly, like she expected that answer. "That makes sense," she said. "You were always the responsible one." Responsible. the same word Mia used when she meant boring. I hated how much that stung. Linda looked down at her hands. I just didn't know who else to ask. There it was again, that hollow sound. Why me? I asked quietly. She met my eyes. Because you see people, even when you pretend you don't. That caught me off guard. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Her expression changed instantly. "Richard," she muttered. Her shoulders straightened. The softness in her face disappeared like someone flipped a switch. "I should go," she said. She started to walk away, then paused and looked back at me. "For what it's worth, Jake," she said, "Mia was wrong about you." My chest tightened. "You are not ordinary. You're just scared to be anything else." And then she walked off toward the exit. I stood there frozen. The music kept playing. People kept laughing. The auction continued like nothing had happened. But I could not shake the look in her eyes. Scared. Was I? I drove home that night with her words echoing in my head. My apartment felt smaller than usual, quieter. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it for a long time before answering. "Hello?" There was a soft inhale on the other end. "It's Linda," she said. Her voice sounded different, quieter, more fragile. "I'm sorry to call so late." My heart started pounding again. "I shouldn't have asked you that tonight," she continued. "You were right to say no." I swallowed. "Are you okay?" There was a pause. "No," she whispered, and in that single word I felt the ground shift under my feet. Because I knew if I answered the way my heart wanted to, nothing in my simple, careful life would ever be the same again. I did not sleep that night. After Linda whispered that she was not okay, the lines stayed quiet. I could hear her breathing, soft and uneven, like she was trying not to cry again. "Where are you?" I asked. "In my car," she said. "In the garage. I turned the engine off. I just needed a minute before going inside." The image hit me hard. A big house in Scottsdale, perfect lawn, perfect walls, and her sitting alone in the dark. "Is Richard home?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "He thinks I'm upstairs already." There was something in the way she said it that made my stomach tighten. "Linda," I said carefully, "you shouldn't sit out there alone." A small, sad laugh. "That's funny. I've been alone for years." Those words stayed with me. I rubbed my forehead and tried to think clearly. Every smart part of me was still screaming to stay out of it. She was married. She was my ex's mother. This was already messy. But I could not ignore the way she sounded. "Do you want me to stay on the phone with you?" I asked. There was a pause. Then, "Would you?" So I did. For almost 40 minutes, we just talked. Not about anything dramatic. She told me about the auction, about how Richard had promised to stand beside her during the speech and then canceled at the last minute, about how she stood alone in front of 100 people and pretended everything was perfect. "I used to make things with my hands," she said quietly. "Clay, stone. I had a studio before I got married. I gave it up because it didn't fit his image." Her voice sounded small when she said that. "Do you miss it?" I asked. "Every day." I leaned back against my couch and stared at the ceiling. I could picture her covered in dust, shaping something real. It did not match the polished woman I saw at those Sunday dinners years ago. "Why did you really call me?" I asked softly. Another long silence. "Because when I asked you to take me somewhere alone tonight," she said, "you said no, and I realized something." "What?" "You're the only man in my life who has ever told me no." That made my chest tighten. "I didn't say no to hurt you," I said. "I know," she answered quickly. "You said no because you were protecting both of us." She took a shaky breath. "Richard would have twisted it. He twists everything." There it was, the thing neither of us had said yet. "Does he know you called me?" I asked. "No, he doesn't check my phone anymore. He doesn't think I have anywhere to go." The way she said that felt heavy. After a while, she said she needed to go inside. I listened as she opened the car door, heard it close, heard the faint echo of her heels on concrete. "Good night, Jake," she whispered before hanging up. But it was not a good night. The next morning at work, I could not focus. I kept replaying her voice in my head, the loneliness in it, the quiet way she admitted she had given up parts of herself. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was a text. "Thank you for staying on the phone with me last night." I stared at it longer than I should have. "You don't have to thank me," I typed back. Another message came quickly. "Can I ask you something?" My heart beat faster. "Sure. Do you regret saying no?" I froze. That question felt bigger than it should have. I thought about the parking lot, about the way she looked at me, about how close we had been standing, about how easy it would have been to say yes and drive her somewhere quiet. I thought about Mia, about lines you cannot uncross. "No," I finally wrote. "I don't regret it." A few minutes passed before she answered. "Good, because I don't either." That surprised me. Why not? Because if you had said yes, I might have done something reckless. And I don't want you to be part of something reckless. I read that twice. Then another message appeared. "But I would still like to see you again. In public. For coffee, maybe. Just to talk." My pulse jumped. This was how things start, I thought. Small. Innocent. Coffee. Conversation. I should have ignored it. Instead, I typed back, "Okay." We met 2 days later at a small coffee shop in Mesa. Neutral ground. Not Scottsdale. Not Tucson. Somewhere in between. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. No heavy makeup. No designer dress. Just jeans, a soft sweater, and her hair pulled back loosely. She looked lighter somehow. Real. When she saw me, she smiled. And that smile did something to me that I did not expect. "You came," she said. "You asked," I replied. We sat across from each other with steaming cups between us. For a few minutes we just talked like normal people. About work, about the weather, about nothing important. Then she looked at me differently. "Richard tracks everything," she said quietly. "My schedule, my expenses, the car." My grip tightened on my coffee cup. "Does he track you now?" I asked. "No," she said. "I left my car at home. I took an Uber." That sent a chill down my spine. "This isn't safe," I said before I could stop myself. She held my gaze. "No," she agreed. "It's not." "Then why are you here?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Because I need someone who sees me as a person." The air between us felt charged. "I'm not trying to ruin your life," she continued. "I just needed one person to remind me I'm not crazy." "You're not crazy," I said. Her eyes softened. "You know what's strange?" she said. "When you told me no the other night, it made me trust you more." That hit me hard. "I don't want to be the reason your marriage falls apart," I said. She looked down at her hands. "It's already fallen apart," she whispered. Silence settled between us. Then she looked up and asked the question I was not ready for. "If I leave him," she said slowly, "would you walk away from me?" My heart started pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. This was no longer about coffee. This was about consequences. And I had no idea what my answer would cost. Her question stayed in the air between us. "If I leave him, would you walk away from me?" I could hear the espresso machine behind the counter. I could hear people laughing at another table. But all of it felt far away. I looked at her and saw something I had never seen before. Hope. Not desperate hope, not reckless hope, careful hope. "I don't know," I said honestly. She nodded slowly, like she respected that answer. "That's fair," she said. "I don't know either." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup again. I had started to notice she did that when she felt unsteady. "I'm not asking you to promise anything," she continued. "I just needed to know if I'd be alone." The word alone hit me harder than it should have. "You're already alone," I said quietly. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't argue. We left the coffee shop separately. She ordered another Uber. I walked to my car, feeling like I had stepped into something bigger than I understood. That night, I got a voicemail. Unknown number. The voice was calm, controlled, smooth. "Jake Mercer, this is Richard Castellano. I believe you had coffee with my wife this afternoon." My stomach dropped. "I'm sure it was innocent," he continued, "but I would advise you to consider the position you're putting yourself in. Some situations are more complicated than they appear. Interference can become expensive." The message ended. No yelling, no threats, just quiet warning. I sat on my couch staring at my phone for a long time. This was exactly what I had been afraid of. This was why I had said no in that parking lot. I did not call Linda that night. I did not text her. I needed space to think, but the next morning she called me first. "Did he contact you?" she asked before I could even say hello. "Yes." Her silence told me she already knew what that meant. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't think you would move this fast." "Is he watching you?" I asked. "He watches everything," she replied quietly. There was a tiredness in her voice that made my chest tighten. "I can walk away," I said. The words felt heavy in my mouth. "If that's safer for you." Another long silence. "Would you want to?" she asked. That was the problem. No, I would not want to. For the first time in years, I felt something real, something alive, something risky, and it scared me. 2 days later, she filed for divorce. She did not tell me first. She told her lawyer. Then she called me from the parking lot outside the office. "I did it," she said. Her voice was shaking, but not weak. I signed the papers. My heart pounded. "Are you okay?" "I feel like I just jumped off a cliff," she said. But I think I needed to. Within a week, everything changed. A small article appeared on a local society blog. It hinted that Linda had been unstable lately, that she had been acting out of character at a charity event. It did not mention names. It did not need to. Then another story surfaced. This one suggested she had grown distant from close friends, that she might be overwhelmed. Richard was building a picture, and I knew exactly what he was doing. We met in public places only, always crowded, always careful. One afternoon at a park in Gilbert, she sat beside me on a bench and stared at her phone. "They're asking about you," she said softly. "Who?" "Richard's lawyers." A cold feeling spread through my chest. "What are you telling them?" Quote, "The truth," she said immediately, "that you are a friend, that nothing inappropriate happened." She turned to look at me. "That's still true, isn't it?" Quote, "It was. We had not touched, not crossed any lines. But the air between us was not innocent anymore. I won't lie for them," she said firmly. "And I won't let them make you the villain." "You don't owe me that," I replied. She shook her head. "I owe myself that." Weeks passed. The pressure grew. Her friends started pulling away. Invitations stopped coming. Messages went unanswered. Richard was isolating her quietly. One night, she called me crying. "They're saying I'm unstable," she said, "that I've been drinking too much, that I'm confused." "Are you?" I asked gently. "No," she said firmly. "I've never felt clearer." That was the moment I realized something. She was not falling apart. She was waking up. Months dragged by, lawyers, meetings, negotiations. Through it all, we stayed careful. But something was building. One evening, after a long day of work, she asked to meet me at a small art center in Mesa. When I arrived, she was standing inside a studio room covered in clay dust. There were sculptures on tables, real ones. "I'm teaching again," she said. There was light in her eyes I had never seen before. "I rented this space," she continued. "Just temporary. I needed somewhere to create." She walked over to a half-finished sculpture and touched it gently. "I stopped being myself for so long," she said. "I don't want to disappear again." I stood a few feet away, watching her. "You're not disappearing," I said. She turned toward me. "No," she agreed softly. "Not anymore." The room felt warm, quiet, safe. Then she walked closer. Not too close, but closer than before. "I need to know something," she said. "What?" "If this divorce finalizes and I'm free, are you staying in my life?" There it was again, the line, the one we had both been circling for months. My pulse raced. Yes, I said before fear could stop me, I'm staying. Her eyes filled with something that looked like relief. She stepped forward. And for the first time since that night in the parking lot, she reached for my hand. Her fingers were warm this time, not shaking, not cold, just steady. And in that quiet studio filled with unfinished sculptures, I realized something that terrified me. I was not careful anymore. I was choosing her, no matter what it cost. The divorce was finalized on a quiet Tuesday morning in February. No drama, No shouting. Just signatures on paper and two lawyers shaking hands like it was any other business deal. Linda called me an hour later. "It's done," she said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear something underneath it. Freedom. I left work early that day. I did not even make an excuse. I just told Frank I had something important and walked out. We met at the small art studio in Mesa where she had started teaching. When I opened the door, she was standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by clay and sunlight. The big windows were open. Warm air drifted in. Her hair was tied back loosely, and there was dust on her cheek. She looked alive. She saw me and smiled, but it was different this time. Not cautious, not unsure, certain. "It's really over," she said as I walked toward her. I did not answer right away. I just looked at her. "You're free," I said finally. She nodded, yes. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she stepped closer, not as someone asking permission, not as someone afraid of being seen, just as Linda. "I kept thinking about that night at the auction," she said quietly, "when I asked you to take me somewhere alone." I smiled slightly. "I remember. You said no." "I did." She laughed softly, "And that's why I'm standing here now instead of somewhere I would regret." Quote. The room felt smaller as she moved even closer. "If you had said yes that night," she continued, "I might have fallen into something reckless, something built out of pain and anger." Her eyes locked onto mine. "But you made me slow down. You made me face my life instead of running from it." My chest tightened. "I was scared," I admitted. "So was I," she said. The silence between us was not awkward. It felt full, like something waiting. "I don't want to be someone you leaned on because you were drowning," I said. "I want to be someone you choose when you're standing on your own." Her eyes softened. "I am standing on my own," she replied. "And I'm choosing you." Those words hit me harder than anything else she had ever said. Not desperation, not escape, choice. I stepped closer until there was almost no space between us. "People are going to talk," I said quietly. "They already do," she answered. "You're 59, I said. "I'm 32. She smiled gently. "I'm aware. You're my ex's mother." Her smile widened just a little. "Yes, that part is unusual." Quote. I shook my head, half laughing, half overwhelmed. "This isn't simple." "No," she agreed. "It's not." She reached up and touched my face softly. "But it's real." For the first time, I did not think about Richard, or Mia, or what anyone else might say. I thought about the last year, about watching her fight for herself, about watching her build something with her own hands again, about how she had pulled me out of the safe, quiet life I was slowly disappearing inside. "You told me once that I was scared to be anything more than ordinary," I said. "I remember. You were right." She shook her head gently. "You were never ordinary, Jake. You were just hiding." The sunlight shifted through the windows, casting warm light across her face. "I don't want to hide anymore," I said. "Then don't," she whispered. I do not remember who moved first. Maybe it was both of us. But when our lips met, it did not feel reckless. It felt steady, slow, certain. There was no rush, no desperation. Just two people who had walked through fire separately and decided to stand beside each other afterward. When we pulled back, she rested her forehead against mine. "I love you," she said softly. Not rushed, not unsure, just honest. I felt the words settle into my chest like they had been waiting there. "I love you too," I answered. And this time, I was not scared of what that meant. The months that followed were not dramatic. Richard tried a few last moves, quiet pressure, legal adjustments, a rumor here and there. But it did not stick. Linda had her own apartment now in downtown Phoenix, a small place with huge windows and a room just for her studio. I helped her paint the walls. I helped carry in heavy bags of clay. We built shelves together. We built routines. Sunday mornings with coffee and music playing softly in the background. Late night talks about nothing important. Long drives through the desert with the windows down. She taught classes 3 times a week. Her students loved her. I would sometimes sit in the back and watch her move through the room, guiding hands, encouraging, laughing. She was not invisible anymore, and I was not careful anymore. One evening, almost a year after that first auction, we went back to the same charity event. Not because we had to, because we wanted to. This time, we walked in together. No hiding, no fear. People looked. Of course they did. Whispers followed us across the room. Belinda did not shrink. She stood taller. Her hand slipped into mine. "Do you regret saying no that night?" she asked quietly as we stopped near the same painting of ocean waves. I smiled. "No," I said. "If I hadn't, we wouldn't be here like this." She squeezed my hand gently. "Sometimes the right choice isn't the easy yes," she said. "Sometimes it's the hard no." I looked at her, at the strength in her eyes, at the woman who had once stood in the same room barely holding herself together. "I'm glad you asked me," I said. "I'm glad you denied me," she replied with a soft smile. The music started playing again, soft piano, just like before. But this time, nothing felt broken. Nothing felt hidden. I was not the kind of man who made bold moves. But that night, standing beside her in a room full of people who once intimidated me, I realized something simple. Sometimes the boldest thing you can do is refuse the wrong moment and wait for the right one. And when it comes, choose it without fear.